Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the New Health Show. I'm Ani Anderson, your host, and I'm really glad that you are here with us today. I'm really excited about this topic because it is one that is one of my personal fascinations, and I love to talk about in my work too. And that is mastering your life force energy. We're going to talk a little bit more about what your life force energy is so that you can understand it. And to do that, I am joined by my guest, Kat Moulton, self-mastery coach. And Kat actually has her own show. I'll tell you more about that in just a second, but I want to say hi to Kat. Kat, thank you so much for being here today with me.
Hi, Ani. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone who's listening live or on the replay. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really honored. So thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to
Thanks,
share.
Kat. And Kat has her own show, the Kreatrix Energy Show. It's on Saturdays at noon Eastern. Kat, would you just tell us a little bit about what you explore on your show?
Well, on my show, we talk all about energy. And actually, we talk about embodying your life force energy. Mine is an interview show as well. So I like to bring on guests who have different facets of energy work that they use, because there's so much out there, and really give people an opportunity or a taste of what that is all about and how it can support them in their own journeys of healing or, mastering their life, their mindset, their energy, emotions, and really feeling really vital and alive inside.
That's awesome. Cool. So make sure you check out Kat's show, the Kreatrix Energy Show, on Saturdays at noon Eastern. And Kat, I'd love to hop into our conversation today, talking a little bit about energy work. I'm curious for you, where did your journey start with energy work?
Oh gosh, it started a long time ago. So I was, back in the mid 90s, I was, figuring my life out like so many 20 somethings are. And I was selling health products before they were really popular, like water filtration, natural skincare, hair care, supplements. And I ended up going to massage school. Like I was always interested in body and energy. And in massage school, I didn't know it at the time. I know it now. I was like channeling energy, on my own. And then it kind of freaked me out. So I studied Reiki, when I was in massage school. And then I really wanted to go to Barbara Brennan's School of Light or Hands of Light. But that was back in 97. And I chickened out. I didn't trust myself, and I got like a corporate job. But I still was always interested in, I think in 1999 and 2000, I started studying polarity therapy while I was working before my kids were born, and, more Reiki. And I've just always off and on studied energy healing. And when I was prepping for this show, like I told you, I re-looked at polarity therapy because I go back to it off and on, and it really is about embodying your life force energy. It's not just a hands-on modality. It incorporates so many different facets of our life. So I'm just, I didn't have the full appreciation for it back then, but that's where it started.
It's really interesting because there are so many different forms of energy healing where you'd put your hands on somebody. I took Reiki as well, and craniosacral therapy. There's all of these different hands-on modalities. For me, it was challenging I knew there was something more than hands-on energy. But I wasn't being met through my education with the information, like it sounds like I'm hearing you say with polarity therapy, to understand it's a way of life, it's a mindset, it's a way of thinking. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it, because like with polarity therapy, it's hands-on, but it's not a hands-on where you're channeling outside energy or your own energy. It's a balancing of the person's, like the client's internal energy, like their own energy. So it differs in that way. And it differs from like Reiki or other hands-on where, you're not just holding your hands, but you are stimulating, like you are using very light pressure in 3 different styles, whereas massage is more manipulation. So it's different in that sense, but it also, incorporates nutrition. It incorporates mindset. It incorporates movement. I mean, I didn't know at the time very much about yoga, but in it, like Dr. Stone, who founded it, it comes from, philosophies of the East and the West, and if you get really deep into it, it's a very spiritual practice as well. So it really is about your whole life and incorporating all of these things. And like, there's movements that you could do, like wood chopper type thing. And it just really began to open up my world. And I've come full circle because really I found I drifted away from it, but all those components are so important to like really feeling vital in our life. It's not just one thing. It's a commitment to incorporating all of it in a way that feels really good for us. There is no one right way.
Right, right. I want to talk to you more about the holistic nature of what you're talking about. Like there's a whole bunch of things we can do, and about how it's important for us to understand our way and mastering our own life force. Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about like, what is life force? I mean, how do we start to have some kind of shared language, at least for the sake of this show, so that people understand what we're talking about?
So I think, like, to keep it really simple, life force is really how we feel inside. So like, if we don't feel really good, we feel depressed, we get slumped over a little bit sometimes, and our energy gets constricted. But when we feel good, we're more upright, we're happier, we're smiling. And so that is really our energy, and it's flowing through us. So I liken it to a feeling or electricity. There's so many different ways you can look at it, but when we feel good, it flows better. When our posture is more aligned, and I used to be more humped over, like it just flows. And there are things that we can do to increase it. And I've developed my own things that I can share if you want, but really, I just think it's just a flow of energy, in how we feel inside. And if we don't feel good, it's not flowing as much. I don't know if that makes sense or is too basic.
Well, I love the fact that you're using the word flowing, because I think that that's something that a lot of people, that certainly clients ask me about all the time, and people aspire to, is feeling in the flow. And even that, when we talk about that, I love to ask like what people mean, because I think a lot of times we're coming from these perceived ways of thinking about the world, and we ask questions like, what does that mean to you? And then people get more awareness, right? So I don't even know that people know what that means a lot of times, but there is this like yearning to be more in the flow. I think what that means is more in touch with my life force energy is what people are really wanting.
Right. And they don't have that language, the life force energy. And that's why I said, I think it's really about feeling good and vibrant and vital, and then we can do things to help us feel that way. And I think most people really want to feel good, or they want to feel better, and they want to feel happy. And it's, we take some of the woo-woo-ness out of this energy work and really break it down so people can, harness their own life force energy and feel good about it, and not think they're doing this weird thing that they're not supposed to know about. Like the reason I didn't go to the Hands of Light school, 2.5 decades ago, because I was afraid of what people thought other people would think.
Exactly. This is a fun time to be alive, I think, because there's way less judgment than there was 20, 30 years ago. And you're speaking my language, because here at the New Health Show, really our mission is to help people understand that they don't have to be behind closed doors thinking that what they're doing is weird, right? Like talking about life force. Look at us. We're doing it out in the open.
And it's, I think, it's becoming more popular. I was at the gym a couple of months ago, and I usually just listen to music. That's one of my things about shifting my energy, but they have all these TVs there and there's no sound and it's distracting. But I looked up and Tony Robbins was on there, and he has a new book, and it's called Life Force.
Life Force,
like, right? It's going mainstream now.
Exactly. So, another important thing that I think that you're talking about is, our life force, we want to feel good, and sometimes we don't. And so that's another thing that we need to talk about it when we don't, so we can feel better. So let's talk for a second about this idea of stagnant life force. So would I know that my life force is stagnant if I don't feel good? Is that a way for me to understand that?
I think so. If we don't feel the way we want to feel, I think that's one indication. And our life force could be low and maybe we're not aware, but if we're okay with it, everybody's energy levels are different, and at different points in their life as well, depending on what's going on. But I also studied in one of the coaching programs that I went to, some of the work of David R. Hawkins. I don't know if you're familiar with the book Power versus Force. And in it, he really talks a lot about that. It is about our emotional state, really. And so if we are resonating in these words or terms like guilt and shame, lower, and there are lower resonating energies, we kind of feel, ugh, and that's when we're like worried to what other people think. And, the thoughts in our mind that kind of ruminate and keep us in a stuck manner. So it's not that we're never going to feel guilt or shame. There's healthy, purposes for that. But when those energies are stuck in the body, sometimes we feel the pain. Like we get physical pain when things are stuck. And it's not just those emotions like anger, apathy, like sadness. When they get stuck in the body, it really depletes our life force energy. And he talks about in the map of consciousness, like moving up to the energy of courage, which is one of the energies of the heart, because that's where we feel empowered and we can shift into what he calls like higher vibrating energies of love, peace, joy, hope, enlightenment. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to enlightenment, but, those are how most people really want to feel. Like most people, I think, intrinsically want to feel joyful, want to feel happy. And I think one of the simplest messages, and I was on a Clubhouse room talking about this morning, is like, it's a choice. And I didn't know that for a long time because like in my home growing up, it was modeled for me like anger, fear, all kinds of no, don't do this, things that were really smothering my life force energy. And it took me a long time and working with practitioners over the years to really realize I can choose to be happy. I can choose to be joyful. I don't have to do all these fancy energy things or all this other work. I can really take a breath and choose. And that choice alone can help shift the energy and open the doors to working with all kinds of people, like, or studying different things or learning about stuff that can help us shift our energy.
So it's interesting about choice. I found that in my own life, there's an awakening to the fact that I have more choice than I thought. And I also hear people talking about how they know that they've heard that they have choice. They don't know how to decide, or they don't know if they've decided. How do you navigate that?
Ooh, that's a good question. In full transparency, I struggle with it from time to time, especially with big issues. I mean, we're all human, right?
Right, totally.
It's a journey. I navigate it. I've created a couple of processes that I work with other people because I use them for myself. So one of them is all about question asking. It's a fire and ice process. And the fire process, the first one, the F, is how do I want to feel? It goes back to this feeling. So I start to ask myself, how do I want to feel? And if I'm not feeling good, I can ask other questions around that, like, am I trusting myself? And what is stopping me? So I do a lot of self-inquiry. And then the I is for, in the fire, it is about like inquiring. And big question to ask is, what would I love? And what am I afraid of? Why am I not feeling the way I want to feel? And why am I not trusting myself? And then the R is for releasing energy. And the E is for beginning to engage and take activity around it. So I start to use those simple things, but then the ice is for intention, choice, and embodiment. So we start to, when we ask these questions and see where we are, we begin to get clarity. We begin to set intentions and make different choices. And it's a learning experience. It's like, what happens when I make that choice and step into it? Did it work out? Did I feel better? Did it not work out? And we just start navigating, I think, by making choices. And when the choices that we make feel good and resonate is a word, in the energy world, but when it feels good to us, then we practice that more. It's a practice like anything else. And that's where the embodiment comes in. We just keep trying it, and I think one of the shifts I had to do was not feel afraid about mistakes, because that, like, I'm a recovering perfectionist, if you will. And I was always afraid of making mistakes. So when I was able to do some of this work and shift my mind even around making mistakes, it made the choices easier, because it didn't really matter the outcome. It mattered that I attempted or did it and learned from whatever the outcome was.
Right. Well, yeah, that's what I'm hearing you say. It's not necessarily that we're trying even to get an outcome. We're trying to get information so that we can keep navigating.
And that information, it's mental, but it's also in the body. Like, what did that feel like? And how does that feel? And like, did I feel good about it? I might feel scared, but did I feel good about doing it? It's like feeling fear, doing it anyways, making different choices. And I think when we make those choices, we become very empowered, like we raise up on that map of consciousness. And that empowerment really helps us feel alive. It like just automatically lights up our life force energy, if you will, just by feeling good that we are making those changes and those choices. And I think from all that, we do get clarity. There's a time for stillness and connecting and listening in, and there's a time for action. And I think sometimes it's the action that gives us the clarity of these things that we've reflected on.
Totally. I think that's one of the things that when I found coaching, I was an occupational therapist, a massage therapist, and an energy healer.
Oh, wow.
And when I found coaching, I was like, that's the missing piece, because in therapy, sure, we use action, but it's more of like exercises, and then in hands-on healing, some practitioners have some kind of, I was in the therapeutic world, so exercises that they would pair with their hands-on work. But coaching really helped me to understand this idea of how important action is, and that idea that clarity comes through getting into action. I'm curious for you, in your development of your fire and ice process, was that informed by the polarity therapy? I can't help but to notice, like, where did fire and ice come from? It's such a cool metaphor.
I think it just kind of evolved. I don't think it came directly, like consciously from polarity therapy, but in studying that and like all the things that have happened through my life and the different things I've tried to feel better and figure out myself, nutrition was a big part. Mindfulness was a big part, movement, all these pieces. But then, like you said, the coaching was the missing link. I kind of fell into coaching. I wasn't intending to be a coach, but it really opened up my world and my mind to getting really curious and asking the questions.
Yeah.
And so I was preparing to do a talk last month in Florida a couple of weeks ago. And in the preparing, I picked out a quote to kick off it. And it was like, now I already forgot what it was, but some women fear the fire. Some women simply become it. And it was all about the fire. And in Kreatrix energy, it's about the fire and the movement. And like in polarity therapy, fire is, they work with the 5 elements, and fire is one of the elements, and that is an element of creation. And so it just kept coming up, fire. And I was like, well, what could I do around that? And one of the questions I always go back to when I work with people is like, how do you want to feel? You know? And one of the creative or generative questions to ask yourself is like, what would I love? So instead of focusing on the past and all the negativity, if we want to get into the joy, what would I love? And so that inquiry, it just kind of evolved. It's
really cool. I love it. And I love the balance of the fire and ice. I think that's something that is so often missing from people's conscious awareness in their development process, is the idea of balance. Right. Like,
I struggle with balance.
But we all do. We're human beings, right? But we all want like the joy states all the time. And then the other stuff comes up and it's like, but we're human beings kind of working through that.
Yeah. And I think, and that's a great point that you bring up. We are human beings, and it is normal to have all these different emotions. I think that the challenge or the problems, for lack of a better word, comes from when it gets stuck in the body and it keeps us stagnant, and we fixate or ruminate on those more, I don't like the word negative anymore. Like, I'm trying to shift out of that language, but the emotions that kind of keep us feeling lower and, I don't know, just not feeling good, not feeling alive. And so,
I like to say undesired.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Helps to get out of that. Cause I do it too. I'm like, negative. I don't want to say negative, but it's not something I really want. Let's talk about what you just said about things getting stuck in the body. I think in terms of stagnation and stagnant life force energy, that's really interesting, because we want to be in the flow, but things get stuck. Do you think people realize they're stuck?
I don't think always. I think some people do, and it depends on like where you are in your life. And I think of some of my family members, my brothers, and he's not in a good place. He's not very healthy physically or emotionally. He's like, well, I am what I am. And he doesn't realize he's stuck, and he doesn't realize he has the power. I'm like, you have the power to change this. Yeah. He's like, whatever. And I've also learned to just love them anyway. So using him as an example, I don't think everyone realizes they're stuck. I think they just think it's a way of life, and
I am what I am. Geez, that's like a really powerful mantra for our own creation, isn't it? That just like blows my mind. Wow. So if a person wanted to be masterful with their own
Mhm.
life force energy, then I would assume that they need to develop some kind of
Mhm.
awareness around when they're
Right.
stagnant.
Yeah. And I think in awareness is part of it, or it's a big part, but then I think like being willing and open to trying things,
Ah,
and I think making the decision or the taking the choice to be like, I can change this, and feeling empowered in that choice. And then the part about flow is like, then the floodgates start to open. Like that's
mm,
my thought. And the synchronicities of different things that show up, that what we can do to shift that energy, whether it's a coach, a healer, a therapist, or, a pattern interrupt. Like I've worked with people, but some of the stuff I've done is on my own too. So like one of my favorite pattern interrupts has become cold water, because I really like to be warm. Like my heat is cranked right now because I like to be warm when
yeah,
I'm talking. But
yeah,
when I was all right, so you and I before this started, we talked a little bit about divorce because I'm headed
yeah.
there, and I was trying to decide, should I leave? Should I go? I had all these thoughts. And it was November in the North Atlantic. I live in New England, and I just went swimming in the water, and that cold water, like it woke me up. And I
Oh,
knew what I had and wanted to do, because that pattern interrupt really got me out of my head and really into my body. Because like you can feel that cold water, and it just helped give me clarity, or give me the space to create that clarity for myself. So I think there's so many things we can do, but it's that willingness to try something new and get outside of our comfort zone, in whatever way that is.
right. Well, you're reminding me that we're always in the flow of our own lives, but we might be in
Mm,
like the flow of our stagnation or whatever. So when you said, I mean, I can feel in my own body, I've also live in the Northeast, and I'm looking out at the lake that's in front of me and thinking about the November chill. I mean, whoa, oh my God. I
it
can
was
just,
cold, but it was
right?
good.
I can
Yeah.
just imagine for myself what that would have done, like the pattern interrupt. I think that's such a fascinating idea, because we are just going about our things all the time. And so to consciously choose to do something that will at least interrupt, perhaps it
Mhm.
will bring clarity. What
Yeah.
other kinds, do you have other kinds of pattern interrupt kind of ideas that you?
Well, pattern interrupt. I think it could be anything that's outside of your normal routine, really. So it depends on where you are. But sometimes people go on vacation, right? Because it's an
Yeah.
interrupt from their life. That's
Yeah.
an example. Trying to think of something else. I mean, I don't take those long cold showers, but when
Yeah.
I need to shift my energy, I'll take like a hot shower, hot bath, and then I'll put the cold water on my legs just to
Yeah.
interrupt the thoughts. That's what I mean. Cold water is a good one. I don't know. I'm stumped. Ask me a new question. I'm sorry.
No,
It'll
well,
come to
what
me.
you were saying too was that these kinds of things come from within a person. So people
Yeah.
are right. Like when you get in the flow, things like you said, the floodgates are going to open up. You're going to get ideas. The
Yeah.
question is, will you step into it? And I love what you just
Hmm.
modeled for us, because I mean, a lot of times I get these kinds of questions too when I'm doing interviews, and people will be like, tell me 10 tips. But what's really important to me is that people get in touch with themselves.
Yes, I totally agree. And that's where some of the inquiry comes in. It's like really starting to relearn about our own self and determine. Like I had an interview, not an interview, but a meeting with a potential client yesterday. And we were talking about the concept of our own energy. Like, how do I know it's my energy and someone else's? And like, we got to
Oh,
go
yeah.
back to basics, right? And just like the question you asked, like, how do we really know these things? And I think we go back to basics and we be open. And one of the basics I have is called the gems. It's like mind crafting or shifting. And the G stands for grounding. So we're like, we really just get grounded and quiet in whatever way that works for us. And there's so many different ways to do it. And then we eliminate the clutter and the noise and whatever isn't serving us. But in our head, it's really, we are eliminating other people's opinions, other people's problems, other people's
Mhm.
thoughts, so that we can get clear on what's really going on for us. And we start to know ourselves, like our energy, or what are our own values on this? And and start to question, like curiosity is the big thing.
Mm.
Is this what I believe? Or is this just what I was taught to believe or influenced by from someone else? And is it really my value and my belief? And start to question it. Like that's part of
Right.
it.
So part of mastering our own life force is understanding what we've been taught by others.
Yeah. And so like on the Kreatrix Energy Show, the tagline is unlearn, unlock, and unleash, like really unlearning everything that doesn't serve us, but not everything necessarily. Like when I was preparing for that talk, I mean, I'm trying to unlearn a lot of things from my mom. She does not have the health that I want at her age, but that doesn't mean I have to unlearn everything she taught me. She was an English teacher. So like when I was doing this talk, I could keep some of those grammatical things that I learned, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
So it's like that tweaking out and that getting clarity. Do we have to get rid of everything we've ever learned? No, but you know, doing that self-inquiry is like, is this serving me? Or maybe it did at some point in our life, but it doesn't anymore.
Yeah.
And then being willing and having the courage or the confidence to let it go. And when we let go of anything, that's what the E is for, like elimination. We create space for new things to show up, you know, no matter what it is. So just let go and be open is partly what I try to encourage people. And the same thing about learning our energy, our own life force. And I think that when we free up that space, I don't know about you, because you do energy too, but like we just naturally start to feel better or feel more alive. And
space is powerful, isn't it?
It is. It took me a long time to understand that or really embody it.
Yeah, I think for me, it took a long time to give myself permission to take space.
That
as a woman, as a mom.
And that was partly what I did when I, you know, made that choice to get divorced or to move on. I needed more space, and it wasn't that language at the time, but I needed to create more space in my life for me and not doing everything for everybody else, because that was my habit. And in that choice and creating that space, I learned a lot more about myself, you know, and really started to unlearn some other stuff. But you're right, as a woman and as a mother, sometimes we just need to give ourselves permission to create space in whatever way that works.
Yeah, it's interesting as I'm listening to you talk about it, I'm thinking about all the times that I've created, not all the times, a bunch of the times that I've created space, and there is magic that shows up, isn't there, Kat?
There is. Yeah. And I'm leaning more and more into that, you know, and making the choice to see the magic and allow it in. And then what we talked about earlier, then we have to take action on it though, right?
Yeah.
That awareness and that vision of it is great. But if we don't make the choices to take action, sometimes we miss out. And that's how we learn, like, too. Like, it's not, I missed out on something a few weeks ago because I was too busy. You know, I was doing too many different things and I didn't trust and second guess myself. And it wasn't just really because I doubted myself. My energy was spread too thin in too many directions and I couldn't make that choice. So I learned from it though, you know. I've really shifted the mindset and I'm not going to keep beating myself up for it. I'm like, okay, what can I do? I got rid of more clutter. I said no to a couple of people that wanted my time. I got off of a volunteer commitment that really wasn't serving me. And I mean, I do like to show up in service, but if I'm spread too thin, and we do this as moms, right? Totally. We dilute our energy. How do we really show up as the best mom we could be, or the best person that we can be from ourselves when our energy is diluted? And that really, to your question, you know, to take it back, that dilutes our life force energy and we don't feel good. I know a lot of moms that are like, oh, don't feel good. And they want to, but they don't know how.
And they don't know how. Yeah. It's power. I loved what you said, dilute our life force. I mean, I'm just getting this image of like, we're spread so thin, and that's something that we say, but to actually think about it in terms of our valuable life force energy, what are we choosing to give away? What are we choosing to keep for ourselves? And that's okay.
Right. And I think that, you know, like you said, it is choice, but to be okay with it. And I think most of us are not trained to be okay with our choices, especially, you know, when it comes to having a family too, and having to manage other people's lives a bit and make decisions for them. And I've admired and I've questioned moms over the years who put themselves first, like because that was so new to me. But really like having that balance and learning from it and being okay with those choices. And, you know, sometimes I want to say, when we make those choices that are different or new, it can feel awkward or uncomfortable, but that's okay, you know, because that's part of the growth, right?
Yeah. Kat, I've really appreciated your take on mastering your life force energy. I've loved having you on the New Health Show. I'm really excited that you joined us. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It was really fun. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that if you're watching live or watching the replay, you'll go check out Kat's show, the Kreatrix Energy Show, Saturdays, noon Eastern. I think one of the most powerful things that Kat said was asking yourself, how do I want to feel? So often we get so bogged down in whatever's going on, we don't stop to be curious, ask ourselves those questions, and then allow ourselves to go into the flow, take action, so we can actually have the life experience that we want to have. So I'm so glad that you joined us for this show. I am here every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern for the New Health Show. In the meantime, go out there, live your best life out in the open. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.